Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to today's and the results of the city's SUMPs UP project. And we're really happy to have you all on board this morning, this Tuesday morning. UBC Talks is a monthly webinar series that we organize here from our Commission of Sustainable Cities. And we cover every month a different topic of sustainability. And we have every month different member cities presenting their experiences. And a little bit more about this later today. So today we will focus on sustainable urban mobility planning and the project, as I said. And before we start with the program, I want to give you very short, some short information about the technicalities and some tips on the webinar participation. By default, all of you participants are muted to just ensure a good quality of the webinar and no disturbances. But anyway, you can get engaged. First of all, you can raise your hand if something really urgent arising. But if you have questions about the webinar, about the content, especially about the content when we have the presentations, we really would like to ask you to use the question function in the GoToWebinar platform. So you can type your questions, and that makes it a lot easier for us to manage your questions, to answer your questions. If there are some questions about technicalities, we'll try to answer them during the webinar, and otherwise we have a better chance to see what there is coming up and we can manage them and answer them in the question and answer session together with our speakers. We will also have a poll and we'll ask you questions. So we hope that you will answer and we will get some input from you. Otherwise, yeah, we really hope that you can hear us well and that you perhaps if you don't, have a short check on your own technical equipment. That is mainly the reason, just to check. But let us know if there's any problems. The webinar team today, as you can see here, so we are both my colleague Maija Rusanen and myself, Esther Kreutz. We are from the UBC Sustainable Cities Commission and we have been organizing this webinar. We both have been working in the SUMPs UP project and want to introduce you to the outcomes of the project and the results and in general how we work with sustainable mobility in our commission. But then we're really happy to have two speakers on board today from two of our member cities. We have Christoffer Petterson-Hernestig from the Trelleborg Municipality in Sweden, and then Evija Taurene from Cesis in Latvia. And so we together, we will provide you today with hopefully really interesting input. And here is the program. We will start with an input presentation about the second edition of the SUMP guidelines. That is also part of one of the outcomes of our project. My colleague Maija will introduce you to that. And then we will get more into practical issues like what did SUMPs UP come up with that you can use in your city? So what is in that project for you, even now when the project has ended? And then we come to the really interesting part where we actually hear the practical experiences from both our member cities and how they are working with sustainable urban mobility at home and in practice. And hopefully we'll give some inspiration and some insights for you in your cities. Then we will have, hopefully still have time for a short question and answer session. And just want to mention already now that in case there are a lot of questions coming up, we'll still be dealing with all the questions and answering all the questions and we'll provide answers afterwards. But let's see how many questions are coming and how much need for discussion there is. Just for your information, the webinar will be recorded. And afterwards, you will be able to rewatch the recording, and also you will receive the materials and the presentations. We'll tell you a bit more later still where you find everything, but just for you to know, so it's easy to revise or to share with your colleagues if you found it interesting. Okay, but now we'll start, and I will give the floor to my colleague. Maija. Okay, now Maija, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esther. Okay, so good morning also from my side and greetings from Turku. So I will present you today the second edition of the guidelines for sustainable urban mobility plans, which were revised and during the past couple of years and published last autumn. So a bit about the presentation. So first I will explain why did we need an update for the guidelines, and then a bit what is sustainable urban mobility plan to remind ourselves, and then I will go a bit deeper into the process, that how the SUMP process works and what has changed in the guidelines, and then how can you use the second edition of the SUMP guidelines. So, but let's start from that. Why did we need an update for the guidelines? Probably many of you might know that there has been a longer policy process that has then produced the SUMP guidelines. A lot of different European projects and initiatives have worked with the concept, and the first guidelines were published in 2014. And since then, quite many of cities have used these guidelines to support their SUMP process and to get help to prepare local mobility plans. And since 2014, the SUMPs have become like mainstream, and about, well, over 100 cities have implemented these plans and prepared those. So there is a lot of practical experience to be integrated in the guidelines as well. And then also the urban mobility has changed quite a lot. Everybody nowadays has a phone, which then also gives new ways to navigate in the city. And who would have thought that we would, or all the mobility planners would just talk in all dinners and meetings just about these e-scooters that quite many cities already have. And of course that there has been introduced like more electric mobility means as well. So there has been a lot of new developments in the world of mobility, which of course like impacts how we should plan the cities and take into account the new developments. So this led to the update of the guidelines, and that was like a 1.5 year process. And during that, like over 300 mobility practitioners were consulted, so that the new revised guidelines would really reflect the realities in the city and take into account these new developments. But then what is a sustainable urban mobility plan? So basically the aim of the SUMP guidelines, or the goal, has not really changed, and cities are still tackling same kind of challenges that they did like 5 or 20 years ago, and some of the challenges might be even more pressing today, like congestion and emissions and noise and traffic safety, and also lack of urban space and urban sprawl. So the core question of the SUMP concept is still that what kind of city do we want and how do we actually get there? And it's a lot about transformation process and how to use the limited urban space there is available in cities to create good quality of life and accessibility for everybody living in the city. And the essence of SUMP, the 8 clear principles, they have like pretty much remained the same, so that the mobility should be planned like for the functional urban area, and then you should cooperate across like sectors and borders, and also with citizens, as is the current and future performance, so that you can then set a mobility vision and define clear targets for the process in your city, and then that you should develop all transport modes in an integrated manner, and then also monitor and evaluate that whether you actually achieve your goals that you have set, and of course assure quality in the process. So these are still the essence of SUMP. Then how does the SUMP process work? Here you can see the new cycle that you perhaps have already seen, and this is the cycle that is aimed for the decision makers, and that following these guiding questions that start from the beginning, you can get like pretty good overall flow of the process and what is important in which states. And the cycle still has like these 4 phases, and then 12 steps as well. So each phase has different steps, and after every phase you should have achieved some milestone. So this is very, very kind of logical and structured process. And compared to the old cycle, now the strategic planning phase and the operational stage have been divided. So the first half is about the strategy development, and then the second half is about the operational stage. And there is now also more guidance on, for example, how to select different kind of measures and how to implement those in the guidelines. Then there is also the more technical cycle, so to say, for mobility planners, which then also include these different activities. So each step has been divided in 2 to 4 different activities that you should implement. So this might look a lot, but it is like pretty logical, the sequence of things. And here I just took like a couple of examples, like what has kind of changed. So for example, the phase 2, the strategy development, that is aiming to really define the strategic direction of the plan. So this has been, for example, clarified that how the process should go. That first you should have like scenarios and then a vision to state like what kind of city you want to develop, and then objectives that respond to the vision, and then also a set of strategic indicators for all the objectives, and then targets that how to really reach those objectives. So this has been, the process has been made more clear in the second edition of the guidelines. And the same goes then for the phase 3, this measure planning, when you go to the more operational side of the plan, that this has been also like clarified, that how to organize the measure selection process, starting from a long list of measures and then narrowing it down to a short list of measures, and doing some cost estimations, then building measure packages so that you can benefit from the synergies between different measures, and then preparing these cost estimation, and then selecting the final set of measure packages, and then developing like the more concrete activities and actions, that how you can actually implement the measures and then get also funding for those. And then what is new, there are also like 3 different cycles addressing the 3 most important horizontal topics in the SUMP process: the citizen involvement, political decision making, and monitoring and evaluation. And with these cycles, you get like help to see like when these elements should take place and when they are like important to take into account in the planning. So these cycles success different phases when you can, for example, involve citizens in the process. What is also new in the revised guideline is that it emphasizes more the flexibility of the SUMP process. So of course, the cycle presents kind of the ideal how these different activities should go, or the sequence of the steps, but it also, this takes into account that you might need a bit more time for implementing certain steps. For example, the implementation usually takes a bit more time than the preparation of the SUMP strategy, and then you sometimes might need to go also back, especially in the implementation stage, when you need to monitor whether the measures are progressing well, and then maybe adapt if not. And it is known that every SUMP process is different, and therefore the concept is like flexible and adaptable, so that it fits the different local contexts European cities have. So how then use the new guidelines? There are like a lot of numbers there. Many elements have stayed in the guidelines as they used to be, but they have been made now like much more user-friendly. So you can basically, you don't have to read the guidelines from the beginning till the end, but you can just open and just check the steps where you are in your SUMP process, and it's just easy to get guidance on that. In the in the guidelines, all the steps have been divided in these different activities, and then you always have the rationale for the activity and then aims and different tasks that you should complete. And also there is in the end a very clear checklist that you can then check that you have achieved what should be. And then there are like also very good tools promoted in the guidelines as well, these good practice examples, which then like fit the specific step that the guideline is addressing at the moment. Then what has been published just recently is the annex to the guidelines. So this is also a very comprehensive document, and it has a glossary which explains the basic terms for SUMPs. Then it has a checklist for these different steps that you can just tick a box when you have completed tasks. And then it has information about the supporting materials for the guidelines, as well as these different good practices. So during the process, like over 60 good practices from different cities were collected, mainly through different like city networks, and they read a different practical and more detailed version in this annex document. And then to complement the guidelines, there are like a lot of different topic guides available as well. So there are like some planning process related, for example, funding and public procurement or participation or institutional cooperation, but then there are also for different contexts of use. For example, for metropolitan areas, and then very soon there will be published a guideline for sustainable urban mobility planning in smaller cities, which I think might be useful for many UBC cities, and then also polycentric regions. So these guidelines take into account more the specific context in different types of cities and regions. And then there are like, to address really the new mobility development, there are these different guides under different policy fields published, and you can find all the guidelines in ELDIS. And then, which was just recently published, there is this 10 pages summary of the SUMP guidelines, which is aimed especially for decision makers, because it has been noticed that sometimes it's difficult to convince the local politicians about the importance of the SUMP. So this might help with that. But so everything is available there, so please go and check all the material. Esther will then explain a bit more, like there are also a lot of other material available. But then just a kind of summary that the change takes time and it requires active planning. But this SUMP concept and the SUMP guideline is a really good tool to manage and bring the change in your city. And it is a flexible process with a good structure, but it's like enough flexible to be adapted in different contexts. And it is the concept that has been proven and tested in many different cities, and these experiences have been now integrated into the revised version of the guidelines. And we would like to also thank everybody who has been participating in the updated guidelines. Maybe some of you have also contributed with good examples or given comments as well. But thank you from my side, and this was just a brief introduction to the new guidelines, and if you have questions, you can put those in the question box. But thank you.
Thank you, Maija. And after we have heard now a lot about the guidelines and about SUMPs in general, we'll actually start right away with a poll that I want to launch here, because we would like to know, do you have an SUMP or a sustainable mobility plan in your city? You please take a moment to answer. It might be perhaps also not so easy. Sometimes you might not think that you have an SUMP, but we are just interested to hear also that do you consider your mobility plan to be an SUMP? And if you really would like to elaborate a little bit more, you can also write some more explanations in the chat or in the question box. That would be also interesting. We can only have multiple choice here, but okay, just a couple of seconds more. Okay, I think now everybody has voted. So here is the result. So 30% says that yes, we have an SUMP, 40% that they have another kind of or another name for their sustainable mobility plan, and 30% say that they don't have any strategic mobility plan. Really interesting. Luckily, SUMPs UP and the materials that we will present you now also are valuable, hopefully, for those of you who are completely at the beginning and would like to start with strategic mobility planning, and also for those who already have an SUMP and want to improve and continue to work with this. Thank you. Yes, and we will continue. Wait a second. Now I have to organize my screen. Yes. So now I've been talking about or hearing a lot about the SUMP guidelines and the strategic backbone of the project that we have actually been working with. And I would like to give you a short introduction to SUMPs UP as a project, and then get into what is in this project for you. So SUMPs UP has been a 3.5-year-long project. It's been a Civitas project and been running from 2016 until, well, the end of this month, but we just had the final event in Brussels last week. So the consortium for SUMPs UP was consisting of different European city networks and other expert organizations and partners, and 7 cities: the city of Malmö, Budapest, Thessaloniki, Turin, Sofia, Birmingham, and San Sebastian. So those cities were part of our consortium and gave us input from the local authority side, because that's of course very important when you develop material for cities, that you need to have you need to know that it's useful for the cities and need to get input from them directly. The overall aim of SUMPs UP and why we created this project was to take up this concept that has been existing already for a couple of years on European level, and to mainstream it, and to really get this kind of critical mass of cities using SUMPs, and to mainstream the concept. And for this, we developed different kind of activities. The focus was also to create activities that enable cities to develop good quality SUMPs, not something that is just written on a paper and put to the next drawer, but to develop good quality plans that are actually helping the cities to reach their vision concerning mobility. And then at the same time, while working very intensely with local authorities, one of our aims was also to mainstream the concept and the knowledge about SUMP and the importance of have strategic urban sustainability mobility planning on the national level, and engage member states in quality SUMP development. So one of the main objectives, as I just mentioned, but just to emphasize this a bit more, because this is what we have been working with mainly, was to enable mobility planning authorities, that means cities, municipalities, and also other mobility practitioners all across Europe, to work with SUMPs and with the planning approach. And especially we were focusing on those areas where the uptake of SUMPs has been low. So we were focusing on those countries and trying to provide resources for cities from those areas in Europe where the uptake was very low. And the target was to create a capacity development, capacity building program, a training program for up to 100 cities, and then capacity building for around 200 mobility practitioners, and reach out to a wide number of authorities all over Europe, as you can see here. And then we come to this learning programs that we've been talking about. So UBC was in charge of coordinating together with the other partners, of course, the capacity development work package, or the capacity development activities, both for those 100 cities that were intensely trained, and also for a wide range of mobility practitioners. But just a few words about the learning program. So there were 5 learning programs organized within SUMPs UP, and I know that some of you who are now listening, apart from Christoffer and Evija, were also part of one of our training programs. So we're really happy to have you here and listen to all this information again, and hopefully there is something new for you. And perhaps also some of the others have been in any of our webinars before. So that's really great to have you. But so the learning program, so we organized 5 different learning programs that were intense, around 6-month training programs for around, it was usually between, let's say, 18 to 25 cities in each group. And they were forming a learning group, and they were intensely trained on different aspects of SUMP in a mix of different methods. So there were face-to-face workshops, e-learning courses, and webinars, and so they were guided and facilitated by the SUMPs UP partners, and they had so a very dense, like this kind of a 6-month phase where they were really concentrating on starting up an SUMP, or enhancing their SUMP, or then in the end also focusing on very specific aspects of SUMP. So that was something, a very intense training time for many of the cities, and we will hear a bit more later from Christoffer and Evija when they tell you hopefully about their experience from this. But apart from these training activities that were in a way, so cities had to apply for, and they were kind of closed, and they were now also really ended, SUMPs UP offers still a big variety of opportunities to learn about SUMPs and to use resources for cities for free, and they are available, and they will be available in the future as well, for anybody who is interested in sustainable urban mobility planning and who wants to use those tools. And those I would like to show you now. We start with the, let's say, more traditional ones. SUMPs UP produced a wide variety of different publications and reports. They, apart from the guidelines that Maija just presented already, and all this accompanying material that is for the guidelines that she already talked about, there is additional guidance for measure selection depending on where you are, if you're a starter city, if you are like stepping up in your SUMP, or if you're already a really advanced city and you want to innovate your measures, you want to do something new, you want to get some new ideas and guidance, like how to get to the next step. So there are these guiding material is available. There is a report if you're interested about the status of SUMP in your country, for example, to perhaps find some argumentation for discussion with politicians, etc. So we have also covered the national level, and then you will find also fact sheets from those cities that were in SUMPs UP and the innovations that they have been working on. And that's also a good way to get some inspiration from those cities. Just a remark at that moment. So we have inserted all the links where you find it, and we will all summarize it in the end one more time, and you will receive all the material. So you will find all the reports and all the material then online later on. Then we come to the a bit more practical, like really training tools and methods that you can use. We have, based on the e-courses that were developed for the learning program, we have adapted those e-courses and turned them into free e-learning courses for mobility practitioners, anybody who is interested to learn more about this. And those are available at the Mobility Academy. The link is there as well. So these e-courses are really like, it's like a self-study course. There is no time limit. You can take it in your own pace. You can take those courses, of course, from your computer, from your desk, and it will help you to go through the different phases and different steps of the SUMP process. It will provide you with different tools and methods and further resources and links, etc., and include a lot of concrete exercises and also examples. So this is really something very useful, I think, to look at. So there are 7 courses available now. and you can browse them through and see where you are, what you would need, perhaps in which topic it would be interesting for you. So this is a really great resource that is now available. And then we have done something like what we are doing right now. So we held a lot of webinars in the last 3.5 years. We had webinars in the learning program, but we also organized 7 different webinars on SUMP aspects, free for anybody to join, for any mobility practitioner to join. And perhaps some of you were already in those webinars. So they were focusing on different aspects of SUMPs. They introduced also all kind of tools and methods and guidelines, etc. But most important, and I think most interesting, was always the showcase from the city. So we always had an example, a practical example from a city, and those presentations have always been very valued, I think. So you find all the webinars that we have made then already, like during the project. You will also find all the webinar recordings and the presentations online. And now we come to something new, very new. It's also results from this project. And this is the SUMP self-assessment online tool. And it has just been launched last week in Brussels when we had the final event. It's a tool that has been upgraded and adapted and further developed during this project. And so it has just been launched. Right now it's only available in English so far. And this SUMP self-assessment online tool is a tool that can help you to kind of find your strengths and weaknesses in your mobility planning. It provides feedback and inspiration, and it can be really used to start a discussion, an internal discussion with your colleagues within your department, between the departments. And it's something that you can use whether you have an SUMP or not. It's something that you can find out, like where are we and where do we want to go, and where are our strengths and where do we perhaps have to improve. And as I said, it's online, it's free to use. There is no auditor or nobody else involved. It's a tool that you can use internally. It's relatively quick and anonymous, of course. Here we say it's like between 20 minutes and 2 hours, and the difference in this I will explain to you soon. So this SUMP self-assessment online tool is really made for cities, for functional urban areas, for metropolitan regions, for cities with or without an SUMP. So there are different sets of questions that you can answer. And it's kind of very intuitive, so you are guided through different sets of questions, and then you can use it for the purpose that you have. And you can use it for general mobility planning processes, or if you want to start an SUMP, you want to develop your SUMP further, to assess the SUMP quality after you're done with the first cycle. So I think it's a tool that can be really used by a big variety of cities and municipalities. This is now not a screenshot. These are just like pieces from the tool, but you can have a look yourself so that you are kind of guided through those different steps. Then there are different questions, mainly like multiple choice questions also to answer. And then you will get this kind of feedback in different colors. And so it's very easy to understand. So there are 30 to 45 questions, depending which set of questions you're using. And you get this feedback based on these SUMP principles that Maija also mentioned. And the recommended steps and examples, and also it's connected to the guidelines and to different tools. So you will get this kind of a recommendation where to find further resources. And an idea is to use it. You can use it alone. You can use it, and that's, I guess, mainly the 20 minutes that if you answer those questions alone. But we really recommend to use it with colleagues, and to perhaps have a workshop, and perhaps take those 2 hours and organize a workshop around sustainable urban mobility planning in your city, and sit together with those colleagues that are relevant for the process and go through those questions together. And also here already start this cooperation and the discussion. And hopefully then make a plan for the next steps. So as I mentioned, the tool is right now launched in English. Well, I heard, or we got the info, so it will also soon be available in Spanish. I'm not sure how relevant it is for all of you, but anyway, if somebody wants to use it in Spanish, it will be available soon, and then other languages may follow, but this is a little bit due to, yeah, like funding, of course, and like how this will be developed. But the aim is, of course, at some point to have all this guidance material, especially the guidelines and also this kind of tools in other languages as well. But also in English, I think it's already very useful. Here is the direct address, sump-assessment.eu, but also this link and everything you will then receive later, or you'll find all this on the SUMPs UP website. And if there is still a little bit space in your brain for even more, I just wanted to mention those two portals, European portals, that also comprises all of our material. This is for once the ELTIS, the Urban Mobility Observatory, where you find really a lot of material, and then the Civitas tool inventory and the SUMP registry on the Civitas website. Just to always remind that there is a lot of material available. I know that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming and it can be a bit too much, but just to keep in mind that there is a lot free resources available, and it might be worth to take some time and get yourself in through the jungle a little bit and see what of those tools can be used for your purposes. And as I mentioned, so all the material that I have mentioned is available at sumps-up.eu. That's the SUMPs UP website, and also soon everything you will find on our website at the UBC Sustainable Cities Commission. We're still working with uploading the material, but you will also find all the material through our website. So thank you. And before that's, I think, enough input for all the tools. And now we would like to hear what our cities have been doing, what the experience they have with the training program, and how they work in practice with sustainable urban mobility planning. And I will now give the floor to Christoffer from Trelleborg.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Hi. Okay, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you. I hope you all can see my presentation. I will present to you what we in Trelleborg Municipality attended the SLP3 course, and I will present to you what it meant for us and how we started to talk to each other in the municipality of Trelleborg. My name is Christoffer Petterson-Hernestig, and I work as a sustainable strategist, and I work with EU projects, urban planning, rural planning, equality integration, accessibility development, and sustainable transportations in the city of Trelleborg. And I would first present to you the discussion I had with a friend of mine who works with biology, and we talked about diverse biology and the comparison to mobility. We came up with this image. That I think we have to talk about bees and flowers, because mobility and biology diversity is almost the same thing. For a forest to grow, there need to be a lot of trees and plants in the forest, and the same thing about the streets. We can't only plan for cars. We need to plan for several different transport modes in our cities. This is what I'm trying to learn my colleagues and the politicians here in Trelleborg, that we can't just promote the car in our city. We need to maybe have other transport modes here in the city as well. I'm also a strong believer of the 8 and 80 movements. That is a company working with old elderly citizens and children in implementing activities in cities. And they're really nice to follow, to get an understanding of what it takes to develop a more sustained urban environment. But one thing that I've learned both from the SUMP program and the 8 to 80 movements is that in a municipality process, it's quite narrow windows that we can implement these kind of theories. For example, we have land use plans for the municipality of Trelleborg, and we have a traffic plan and a traffic strategy. but they reach for like 4 or 10 years at a time. And when they end, then we can start talking about these new kind of aspects that we can implement in our city as well. So these are like long-term process, and it takes some time. In our case, we are not going to develop a SUMP, a separate document. We will instead try to incorporate that in our traffic strategy. In our context, we are based the city of Trelleborg in the south of Scandinavia, in Sweden, very close to Denmark. We are located in the region of Skåne, next to the third biggest city in Sweden called Malmö. And we are kind of a rural municipality, and have all the advantages and all the challenges connected to rural development, rural mobility. The city of Trelleborg and the municipality of Trelleborg is quite the same. I've learned that in EU we talk about a lot about the city in regions and in municipalities, but in Sweden we work on a municipality level all the time. And we think also that the urban and the rural are connected to each other. So what's happening in the urban areas affect the rural areas and vice versa. We are almost 30,000 inhabitants in the city and almost 45,000 inhabitants in the municipality. And we are Sweden's second largest harbor and the most southern city in Sweden. And because of the big harbor, it faces a lot of challenges regarding transports and goods. We have almost 10% of all the import going through the city, which is quite massive flows for this kind of small town. 67% of all short transport up to 0 to 5 kilometers is used by car or motorcycle. So we are quite a car-friendly city and municipality. We are a short distance to Malmö, which is the third largest city in Sweden. So it also we are almost like a suburb to Malmö. We have a day population that commutes, and like 40% of the population in the city commutes to Malmö. So we have a negative population movement during the day. We have one train station located in the south center of the city, close to the railway connection to the harbor. And a lot of development and building projects is happening right now in the city. For example, these places are under planning at this moment, and we are doing, as a lot of other cities is doing right now, we are changing our harbor from a harbor to apartments and buildings, and a new city park will develop during these 50 next years. We are also having a project in the center of Trelleborg that's going to make Trelleborg more dense and connect some neighborhoods with each other and make better flows. So we hope. This is how the harbor looks today, and here we can, and it's a great opportunity to talk about mobility here in this new kind of part of our city, because it's going to look like something like this in 50 years time. And here we can do a lot of experiments and try new mobility solutions. For example, how could e-bikes and the Voi and Lime solve mobility challenges that we have today, and how maybe autonomous technology and autonomous shuttles could solve some mobility issues for the residents that will be here in the future. This is the city, what it looks like today. We have an industrial area in the west and the east, and then we have rental housing in the city of the center, and then we have one family housing in the sides of the city. And in this circle, it only takes 12 minutes with a bike and 30 minutes to walk. So we are quite short distances here in Trelleborg. However, people tend to take the car within the city anyways, and it's been like that for like 60 years. And we have been planning for the car for 60 years as well. To understand our mobility challenges, we have developed some maps. This is all the bus stops in the municipality. And as you can see, almost the whole municipality have access to a bus stop or a railway station, which you can see in the city. And if you don't live close to a bus stop in the green areas, you can call a transport on demand service. So yes, we have accessibility to public transportation in the whole municipality. Regarding bike and the path for walking, we don't have that as much in the rural areas, but we are well connected in the urban areas and in the villages. But this also reduces the usage of car because people can't commute with bikes from the rural areas to the city. And if you put this like mobility maps on top of each other, you can see here that we have also access to our neighboring cities, but we don't have it to all of the neighboring cities. You can see in the far northeast, there's a city called Skurup, which is one of our closest neighboring cities, but we don't have any public transportation access to it. We have a new train station from 2015, and it was a great thing for the city to regain a train station. The old train station closed in the 70s, and from the 70s until 5 years ago, there were only bus connections to other cities. But now we have a train station, and it's quite high in use. And the train station is located quite center in the city. As you can see here, Trelleborg C is the train station, and here is the path by minutes where you can reach the city, and you can reach the whole center within 10 minutes of walking. But our transport mode in percentage use is declining in walking and biking. We have done surveys since 2017, and we can see that public transportation is taking percentage from walking and biking in the city, and car use is only increasing. And this is a challenge that we need to solve in somehow, because we have regional goals that we need to develop our statistics from. So to the left, you can see what the region of Skåne wants us to have the transport share mode, and then to the right, you can see what the reality looks like. And we have quite big roads inside the city. Here you can see all the main roads connecting the city, but there are barriers as well. They divide the city into different parts, and they are used quite a lot, especially with the goods from the harbor. And when we took this course, SLP3, and it was quite nice. And now I think about it, we ended the course last year, and it was quite nice to have a forum, a smaller project where we could collect co-workers and colleagues on different departments and talk to each other about this challenge that we stand in the city, because there are different departments within the municipality work with mobility in somehow, but we don't have a forum or a platform to discuss common issues and common challenges that we need to develop over departments, and don't think about departments' limits. We send out a letter of interest to all the departments that we have within the municipality. We are we're the 5th largest municipality in Sweden, so we have like 4,600 employees. And we got a small working group with the administration board, strategic planning, and servicing infrastructure. And it was me working with sustainability together with built environment and traffic management that took this course and started to talk about mobility in Trelleborg city. And this Department of School, Labor Support and Social Service, they were also connected to this forum, but they didn't do all the reports and all the activities. But one thing that we noticed early in this course is that we don't have this kind of forum, so we established one, and we sat down and discussed together. And that forum has continued and is an internal network for traffic and mobility. and we meet every fourth month. And we did all this activity in SLP3 program, and it was a great way to start our discussions, like where are we standing now, what do we need to do and solve to face all these problems that we have regarding mobility in the municipality. I just show you this kind of products that we made. Here's one: create a list of measures and what we need, what we saw that we were needed to develop in our city. But one thing that was quite nice to do was this package measures for Trelleborg, where we sat down with all our measures and rated them with a score in their impact if we should do them. And this was quite nice to do, because we learned quite soon that if we do something for the car, it only promotes the car as an activity. But if we would do something else, for example, improve standard of existing bike lanes along priority streets, then that should also have spill effects on other stuff that we need to solve in the city. For example, to have a more walkable city, or to have children biking to the school. So when we started talking about this, we got a common ground vision that we can all strive from. And also, when we met in the course, it was quite nice to get lessons learned and good practices. Here you can see how some of the other program takers, what they have been doing, and that was quite nice for me to learn that you can do a lot of stuff. You just need time and leadership and political will, and frame a problem that you wanted to solve together. For example, in the down right corner, there was a city that wanted to make a more pedestrian friendly city center. So they worked quite a lot with that, and they planned away all the cars, and the result was that people and streets become more nice to visit and walk along. Also, we had a workshop in Bucharest, in Malmö, and Budapest, and for me personally, this was a great experience to learn how other cities had the same problems and facing the same challenges as me, with lacking of political will, or politicians that had other ideas of how their city should be, or we could talk about common activities on how we solve them from each other's perspective. And we had also the webinars that was quite nice to have and collect all and had webinars here in Trelleborg. When we had these webinars in the program, I could shout out to my co-workers and colleagues to come and sit down together and get the same knowledge from lessons learned from other cities. And one thing is that we are going to start developing here in Trelleborg is this kind of bike lanes or walking lanes along rural roads. It's just paint on the roads, so it's not that expensive to implement. Also, that I can show how other cities make their analysis. Here is Evija's analysis that we did in Cesis. They take drone pictures during the winter to see how cars actually drives around the city. And unfortunately, we haven't had any snow so far in Trelleborg. But I've talked to a guy within the municipality who has access to a drone, and if snow is coming here, then we should also go out and take some photos on how cars actually drives in the city. And if cars doesn't use all the space in the road environment, then we can narrow down some streets and make it more bicycle friendly, for example. And I really love this project model of SUMP. I think it's quite supportive to start to develop a document that will be leading the infrastructure here in Trelleborg. And I would love to see this, and I understand that we can use this in other aspects, for example, for sustainable urban development. with how we should have a sustainable planning of our housing and buildings. We can use this as a project model for that as well. So everything that we learned from the SUMPs UP and from the workshop and from the working group ended up in an internal group for traffic and mobility planning. And we have met quite a few times. Here you can see all the representatives from different departments talking about common issues. And we have the city as a result of a lot of earlier decided decisions regarding how we plan our city. To understand this better, we started to investigate have been planned for the last 20 or 30 years, and we did this kind of a time lapse to see what we have been building and what kind of infrastructure that we have developed. And we have quite a lot of one family buildings in the rural parts of the city, and then we have quite a lot of road developments within our city. And it was quite to get us an understanding what had been happening in our city for the couple of last years. And all the pink circles you can see here is development projects that have been happening since 2007. And as you can see, all our development project is in the outside of the city, and none of them have been inside the city to make the city more dense. So we have quite an urban sprawl here, which also affect our transport usage on what's transport mode that our citizens are using. Here's an example for a road crossing that they changed to a roundabout instead. And this only promotes the car, and the car usage in our city have been increasing since the last 15 years. Slowly, but it's increasing. And when we met during the workshop, it was quite nice to talk to other partners in the program to also get out frustration, because the partners in Portugal and Spain had the same problems that we had. So I got a feeling that I wasn't alone about this issue. It's a common issue for the whole of from the whole of Europe, but we have come some cities more in their sustainable development and than others. So for us, the SUMP learning program was a forum or a smaller project that gave us this same vision on how we can develop our city. This is a graph that shows if you want to change something in your organization, then you need clarity and agreement. And if we are close to clarity, certainty, and close to agreement, then it's simple to make these kind of changes within the organization. But if we are far from certainty and we are far from agreement within the organization, it's going to be more complex and more chaos in the development. But the SUMP learning program gave us tools and forced us to start talking to each other. So we have now a common ground, a base to lean against. And so on, we think that it will be simpler for us in the future to develop sustainable mobility in our city. Because we can think, we always expect that change will appear in rational ways, but it's more like this. In our organization, it is like a more organic way to solve some issues and to handle projects. But the SUMP learning program gave us a foundation to start again and reboot our work with mobility planning. Because we have ambition to make the city center a pedestrian center with no cars, but we lack political will for this, and we lack knowledge and the will from some key colleagues. And hopefully we'll have this in the future, because a new citizen who move here to Trelleborg is demanding new and environment-friendly aspect in our city. For example, we have developed a cargo bike pool for people to, without charge, book a cargo bike for 11 days to try how life will be without a car for 11 days. And every time it's been loaned, they have the loan takers have bought their own cargo bike. So it's a new movement here in Trelleborg. And as I said, there are short distances here in Trelleborg. Within this area, you can walk you can reach every corner for 7 minutes, but you can also drive a car in 2 minutes in every corner. So we are quite an accessible, friendly car city at this moment. But in the long term, we hope that the SUMP program would help us to develop a more sustained city center. And yeah, this is also a picture of the priority pedestrian zoning area. Because a pedestrian and biking friendly city center in Trelleborg isn't a new thing. If you look back to the 40s, everybody used a bicycle or walk to their working places. So to the left, you can see a picture from 1945, and the picture here is from 2016. And they are quite different in what people use for transport mode. And it's the same thing in on other streets from the 1945. People tend to take bike in use bikes much more than cars. And yes, there were less cars owned by people back then, but it also shows that if we could do it back then, we can also do it again. Here's the same crossing, but it's not the same building. As you can see, there's a lot of bikes to the left and lots of cars to the right. And also this is our shopping streets in Trelleborg. And as you can see, in 1945, there are people walking, people bicycling, and they had quite a shared space here. Compared to how it looks today, we only have cars on the roads and some bikes, and people are forced to the sides of the road. So during the SLP program, we started in this working group, we started to discuss what was the original plan for Trelleborg, how was it tend to look, and this is the results. And we dug in our archive and looked on old zoning plans and old land use plan. And they don't match on how they were supposed to be. This is a land use map from 1955, and it's quite different from how the city looks today. So the design of the city isn't right, and that we need to fix. Also, we looked at the land use plan from 1968 and in much more than the map before. But still, the city doesn't look like they planned earlier before. We have done smaller projects one at a time, and it's gone away from how it was supposed to be. So how will the future look like? Actually, I don't know, but we have begun talking to each other over department, and we have a forum where we talk about mobility. And hopefully this will continue, and that we will have a lot of activity in every department to solve this together. But the SLP3 programs broke some silo organization here in Trelleborg. We have a problem that we don't talk to each other, and we don't have any common forum for common problems. So the SLP program helped us to begin this kind of therapy. And what can we do until the future is here? In the course, we look at a lot of good example and lessons learned, and that we can continue with. This is a municipality in Sweden called Linköping. They redid this parking square or parking place to a livable meeting place. Instead of having cars standing in the city taking space from people, they took the space back to the people. And I'm seeing this kind of movement in Sweden as well when I'm traveling around, that almost all city centers is looking back to the citizens and ask them, what do you want with this area? And none of them say more parking spots. Also, we can look at other cities in Sweden. The city of Malmö, where we are, is quite close here. They work a lot of summer streets. And during the summer, they close streets for cars and they make some activities there where people can sit and hang out in the sun. They have concerts and activities. And it's the same experience that's from Luleå. They also do summer streets and are closing streets during the summer. And I got so happy when I read this article about a Spanish city called Pontevedra that has banned all the cars in the city center. So we can see this from the whole of Europe, that this kind of change regarding mobility, that people see that the beautifulness with walking and biking and having the streets back to the people again is happening. And the car has only been here for like 60 years, and it's the most dominant aspect that we can see in here in the city. And as I said in the article, people now hear birds singing and hearing people talking to each other instead of noise from cars. So what we will continue with is we had this project that will try autonomous shuttles here in Trelleborg, and one thing that we learned from that is that we need to reduce car usage in the city for this kind of new technology to work, because it only goes 70 kilometers per hour. So people could be irritated if they ended up behind one of these. So we need to maybe exclude cars from our roads to implement this kind of new technology. So it could be also a tool together with the SUMP tools to get a more sustainable urban environment. So further work in Trelleborg, what we will continue working with and what we see in the next couple of years is that we will continue the internal network with mobility aspects and traffic solutions, and to continue the discussion between departments and not that every department is planned by themselves. We will continue to work with sustainable urban mobility planning in our upcoming traffic strategy and our traffic plan. We have a lot of documents that control mobility in somehow, and we need to collect all of them to one document and have activities connected that are measurable and understandable. We will implement measures from the SUMPs UP in our future documents. We will educate politicians and co-workers and colleagues on urban mobility planning and sustainable transportation. We will also make small changes with small projects, one at a time. The SUMP learning program was one of those smaller projects that we did that also gain access to people to start talking with each other within the organization. And we will also use new technology as a tool to reduce transport need within the city. Our project with the autonomous shuttle should decrease the need for car in the long term, but now it's just a symbolic project that will reduce the car within the city during this project time. But if we go with this technology for the whole city, then we need to somehow make space for the new technology. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that you learned something here from Trelleborg. If you have any questions, you can send them today in the chat, or you can also contact me by email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoffer. Thank you very much. And yes, if there are any questions, please ask them in the question pane, and we will take them later. You have said so many important things, and I'm really happy to hear how things have been going in Trelleborg. And of course, we are also really excited to hear how much the SUMPs UP project has contributed to this. You mentioned so many important things that are needed to make a change in the city with time and leadership and of course political will. But I think the first and most important, and for some most difficult step is what you have now already started, is this talking to each other. And it's incredibly often the problem in the beginning to get this discussion started. And I'm really happy to hear how well this has been going. And I have a couple of questions that I will ask you later, but I would now first continue with Evija, and then we can have a common discussion. Thank you, Christoffer.
Okay.
I will now give the floor to Evija, who was already shortly introduced. Hi. Now you should have, received the request to share your screen, and we're really excited to hear your presentation. We don't hear you. Can you check your microphone? You're muted. Wait a second, I'll try to. Now?
Okay. Hi.
Yes, now. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So you can hear me now and see me now. So presentation is coming right up. Okay. So yes, hi. My name is Evija, and I work for Cesis Municipality in Latvia. It's a small town, and I'll show you just in a minute where we are located. But just before I start with the actual slides, I also had the chance to participate in SLP3 program together with Christoffer, and he as well showed some of the pictures that how and what we did in the learning program. My role in Cesis is I'm a chief spatial planner, but as in small municipalities, it often happens that this role implies many things. So I'm doing both strategic planning, spatial planning, land use plans, also detail planning, also citizen engagement, and lately quite a lot of mobility planning. So this is where we are located, around 85 kilometers from Riga and Estonia. So we are in the middle between those two places. We are located in the middle of Gauja National Park. So we have quite a lot of forested territories and nature protected territories around us. And at the heart of the city, there's also an old town from the medieval times with a castle and a big church and curvy streets, quite narrow streets. And most of the services are located in the old town or the nearby city center. A few facts: we have an area just a bit more than 19 3 square kilometers, and so the amount of the citizens, the population is a bit more, 16,000 inhabitants. The functional area slightly more, but the municipality of Cesis is basically just the town and a little bit of the countryside territory. So the functional area, all the smaller towns and smaller villages that are closely connected functionally to Cesis are actually not a part of the municipality. As you can also see in the slide, we have a budget just over 31 million euros, which is not a huge one, and nearly 50% of that goes towards education sector. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we face when we also speak about mobility and the streets and the street spaces, because it's not so easy to find proper finances for mobility projects. And so basically, I'll tell you slightly more about what do we do in order to still be able to do something regarding mobility with the funds that we have. Another thing is that, yes, we are also quite a touristic place. And despite the fact that Cesis is an important place regionally, a center for jobs, for services, for education, we have a declining population. So within the last 10 years, we have lost a couple of thousand citizens, and also within these years as well, we are really much working towards how to make the city more livable, more attractive, to give it the charm, and you can say a vibrational or so. Here you can see the Cesis town and the nearby villages, and similarly as with Trelleborg's case, we also have quite important connections with the rural areas around us. And these are the people that are as well not using bicycle or walking as their everyday means of transport. They have to come in the city by car or by public buses, which are not that well developed service as well. Some of the mobility challenges we face, we are quite a car-oriented city still, and there's this sort of issue around parking. People tend to go where there are parking spaces, and this has been a huge discussion over the years around here. We lack some infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, and although as being a small town, it's also a very walkable. Similarly, as in Trelleborg's case, you can walk across the old town in 5 to 7 minutes, and you can walk across the whole town of Cesis in 20 to 30 minutes. As we are a regional center, not one of the main cities in Latvia, we don't have much say about the public transport, as this is a function that is purely managed by the bigger cities in Latvia, so they manage their own public transport and we don't. So the public transport opportunities for everyday travels around the city are not that many, and they're quite poorly developed. And I'm also sad to say that we have quite a low traffic safety. If we look at the statistics, there are 20 to 30 road accidents with injuries every year, which is quite a terrible case actually. So we are working a lot towards making the city more pedestrian friendly and more cycling friendly and much more safer. These are the challenges that we actually worked a lot with and talked a lot with in the SUMPs UP program as well. Christoffer already showed some of the examples of the tasks that we had in the SUMPs UP learning program, but I also just want to mention this again. Please look at the online courses that Esther talked about in her presentations, because these are the things that really practically help you to understand how to analyze the mobility of the city altogether, how to create measures, how to pack them together, how to measure, how to rate them according to your aims and goals as a city. And this has helped us a lot in the process of learning about sustainable urban mobility. because we had done several things around mobility before. We have had an approved street design plan for the whole city. We have had an approved cycling plan for the city. We have a traffic plan for the city as well as a part of territorial land use plan. But we haven't looked at these things in a really integrated way, and this is one of the goals of creating the SUMP, is to look at the mobility in an integrated and holistic way, and this is very helpful and was helpful to us in the learning program. So what we've done since the end of the learning program is we have approved another plan, which is called the Traffic Safety and Traffic Calming Guidelines. We did that just last October, so it's quite fresh. And we've been working a lot with making really certain plans on how to implement certain measures already this year and the next 2 to 3 years. We have a pedestrian program that we are planning to implement, and procurements are happening right now as to who will do those things. We have a plan to introduce new cycling lanes also this year, organizing citizen hearings the next month. We have a program for the squares and the streets where we want to put on more greeneries, more street furniture. We work with the neighborhoods, the 1 to 2 story housing neighborhoods, where we are already for several years introducing these livable neighborhoods territories with 20 kilometers per hour allowance of traffic speed. And we are organizing a lot of educational activities, also working with schools, organizing Mobility Week. Last year, we also participated in this cycling challenge, Europe-wide cycling challenge. And we do quite a lot of experimenting. And this is one of the things that I will also tell you about in this presentation in a couple of minutes. So as you already saw in Christoffer's presentation, this is the example that I showed in the SLP program. How are we using the snack down method, which is basically a method where you photograph the street space in the winter time and see where the cars go, and how you can use the space in a better way. So on one side of the screen, you see the example of 2018. This is the main square of the city. It's called Unity Square, Vienības laukums, which is actually, it used to be a somehow undistinctive roundabout where cars went in and then chose their own trajectory, however they could. And right after the program, we did an experiment in this very square and chose sort of a new layout for this big asphalted field that we have in the center of the city. So here you can also see the picture of how it looks in December of 2019 when we had snow for a couple of days. So the square has now a completely different shape and much more space for pedestrians and happenings. And how we did that was we joined together with an event that was happening last May, and this event helped us to sort of to take up the space and simultaneously to create this traffic changes. And you can be sure that this was a very debated thing the whole year through. And we actually have the saying in Latvia that where there are 2 Latvians, there are 3 opinions. And this is very true for this case. As much as we tried to speak with the general public and explain the idea behind it, I can say that the society was very polarized, around 50-50. The ones who were congratulating us for this great experiment, and the ones who saw the importance of giving the place to citizens, to walking. And then there was the other part who was very angry even about the experiment, and who said that this is creating delays in their everyday travel. They have to spend on the way for around 30 seconds longer time, which is nothing if you compare to the whole of the travel, but apparently it is quite significant for some people to be able to drive wherever they can as fast as they can. But in general, I must say that this was a very important experiment for us as a municipality, so that we can prove to ourselves that this way that we have chosen, fast, simple, easy, cheap solutions, is something that can work for us. And I think we have proved it to ourselves that it can work, and and we are moving also forward with this idea. Another thing that we are doing quite a lot is redesigning the old town. But maybe just to save up a little bit of the time, there's also a link in the presentation which you can later read through. It's a Civitas article on how we are transforming the town through street design, and you can find it on LinkedIn. But also just a quick picture, this is how the streets in the old town used to look, and this is what we are doing now in order to make it more livable and more interesting and more, well, basically a better place to walk around, and where the car understands that it's not the main user of the space, as it has, like, we leave for the car only the smallest space possible. And of course, my dream is that we will have an old town without cars, but this is coming maybe somewhere in the future. As Christoffer has also mentioned, there has to be a lot of work together with the politicians and together with the co-workers and together with the citizens, for everyone to understand and see a common vision for the mobility of the town and for the street design of the town. And shortly, what's next for us? As I mentioned, we approved these traffic calming and traffic safety guidelines, and we have a lot of things to do and a lot of measures to implement those. We still have many places in the town where there are big empty asphalted fields that we have to narrow down. And this is one example, sorry. And what we aim to do, is to do a lot of narrowing down, raised crosswalks, a lot of work with the street space, with cheap solutions, and things that we can do really fastly. And this is the plan for the next 2 to 3 years. Compared to the size of the town, these are a lot of places that we are hoping to change, and many of these are in the living neighborhoods. And maybe one thing, a takeaway from me, is that what we have learned all through this process is to plan the mobility according to the values of our city. And our values and aims is to create a more sustainable city and more walkable city for everyone. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Evija. Thank you very much also for this interesting presentation. And here, I think also you nailed the essence of working with SUMP very much when you said that we should have to look at mobility in an integrated and holistic way, and how close mobility planning is, of course, to urban planning and strategic planning in general, and also what Christoffer mentioned, that to the approach, the planning approach as such, of course, can also be adapted to other topics. So thank you very much, both of you, for your insight. I see that we already reached the end of our webinar, unfortunately. We also did not receive any questions from the audience. I would have still a lot of things to ask and discuss, I have to say, but I think we have to stick to our time schedule as well. To all of you in the audience, I think, as Christoffer mentioned, and perhaps also for Evija, it would be okay to get in touch afterwards if there's something really pressing. And of course, you can get in touch with us as well if you have more questions. But I would now like to really thank you, Evija and Christoffer, very much for your presentations and your insights, and also, of course, we are really happy to hear that the SUMPs UP project and the learning program has given such a good impact in your cities. And for all the others, I also think the issues that they both speakers mentioned, to talk to each other, to start to cooperate, and also to experiment and to be brave and to perhaps try to look for like small and cheap solutions that you can test and try out, that this is really a good way to start to improve mobility in your city. Now, wait a second, I'll show you the last slide for today. So yes, thank you one more time for the speakers and for all the presenters, and thank you all for participating. If you have any questions about SUMPs UP, the project or the products, or anything concerning sustainable urban mobility planning, you're really welcome to get in touch with Maija and me here at our commission. Also, and that's something that I think came also really clear from both presentations, it's really worth to cooperate. It's really worth to discuss and meet colleagues from cities, from other cities in Europe or from our region, and to discuss. And I love how Christoffer referred to the SLP as a therapy group. I know that in your SLP this was a special group, but I think there is a really true point. It's really helpful sometimes to share both the good examples, but also the frustrations, and also to share what's not really working. And sometimes still there's something good coming out of this. So cooperation between cities, as you can see, is a very valuable tool. So consider this also when you work in your cities with mobility or with any topic. There will be possibilities to cooperate in projects or in this kind of programs or something. So keep your eyes open and get in touch if you're interested. I mentioned before, you will receive the recording and the material. All this will be on our website. You're really welcome to follow us on, well, anyway, our website and on social media, what we are doing in UBC Sustainable Cities Commission. And then I would like to draw your attention to the next 2 webinars coming up, when UBC talks about the best practices in CDP reporting, which is the Carbon Disclosure Project reporting. And in April, UBC will talk about stormwater management. So please, if you want, share this with your colleagues who work with those topics. We would be really happy to have you on somebody from your city on board again. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and have a nice day. Thank you.